Hello, football fans. Welcome to the Team Rivalry Big Ten Week 1 preview. I am your host, Mackenzie Richardson. We've got a full slate of games coming at you this weekend. In this video, we're going to cover the East Division, plus a couple of conference games. There's a couple of them going on this week. A little bit early for them to be happening, but hey, times are changing, like I said in the West Division preview. Speaking of which, if you haven't checked out our West Division preview, the video is going to be linked in the show notes, which you can find down, well, like where I pointed down there. That's where I pointed. That's why I did that. If you would take this opportunity, like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell for notifications and all that. This content is free for now, okay? And it helps us in the YouTube algorithm. Plus, like I said in the West Division preview, it might help you because eventually we're going to be famous. That's the plan. So if you get to talk to us, that's cool for you. You'll have a cool anecdote. We'll have a multi-million-dollar sports empire, but you'll have a cool anecdote. I feel like this works out for everybody. It does. Trust me. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the games. We've got game one coming up here, Western Michigan versus Michigan State. Western Michigan being my alma mater, so I'm a little bit emotionally invested in this, although I'll try to be unbiased. September 2nd, that's Friday night at 7 p.m. Western Michigan, to be totally honest, hasn't exactly been the same since PJ Fleck left, and I'm not at all bitter about that. However, for Michigan State, Mel Tucker definitely brought MSU out like a monster last year, garnering 11 wins in his second season. Both coaches make a lot of use of the transfer portal, Western Michigan and Michigan State. The question is, what exactly does Mel Tucker need to accomplish in game one to prove that last year was not a fluke and that his multi-million-dollar contract wasn't a mistake? In my opinion, he needs to soundly beat Western Michigan at home. I know that's not something I should be saying as a Western Michigan alumni, but it's true. He really does need to beat the Broncos pretty handedly in order to answer some questions week one. And the thing is, though, is that the Broncos are a sneaky good team from the MAC. They finished last season among the best in sacks, third down stops in the country, and brings back a lot of talent from last year and had some great pickups through the transfer portal as well. Mel Tucker, on the other hand, has also brought in a ton of talent through the portal. We all saw last year how well that worked out for them with Kenneth Walker. He definitely should have been in New York. It's a travesty that he wasn't. The problem, though, is that Michigan State doesn't have a player that can do the types of things that Walker did at any position right now. They did bring in running back transfers Jalen Berger from Wisconsin and Jarek Brouchard from Colorado, who are both absolutely talented in their own right, but not quite the caliber that Walker brought to the table, which is going to place a lot more pressure on quarterback Peyton Thorne to make some plays. He was definitely up to the task last season, but Michigan State's offensive line wasn't exactly that great, and it's going to be even more difficult this season because, frankly, they have some issues staying healthy. They only actually had 8 offensive linemen, I think it was, dressed for their spring game. So questions about staying healthy on the O-line. But that being said, I think while Western Michigan could definitely score some points, Michigan State's going to be definitely more talented. So I'm going to go ahead and take them to win an interesting game, but I think they'll pull away in the end. Michigan State 31-17. For game 2, we've got Colorado State versus Michigan, September 3rd, noon. Colorado State had 3 wins last season. Not great. Michigan, on the other hand, are the reigning Big Ten champions. Go Blue. This is a must-win game for Michigan because if they lose, the question is whether or not Colorado State has a chance to be Michigan's next Appalachian State. And obviously I'm going to say no, but that remains the case until it happens, right? This is probably the first year that Michigan can say they're reloading rather than rebuilding after a successful year, and it comes on the heels of one of their best seasons in school history. Colorado State, on the other hand, is welcoming in first-year coach Jay Norvell from Nevada. With Norvell came a slew of transfer players, mostly on the offensive side of the ball. 4 of the projected 5 starters on the Rams' offensive line are all transfers, and they have a defense that was one of the best in the nation at getting into the backfield. Unfortunately, they don't have a single position group that looks poised to shine from the get-go this season, except for maybe the experience coming back at linebacker, which should present an interesting test for Michigan's pass game early on. Colorado State's offense is going to rely heavily on the pass, but Michigan's secondary returns a lot of experience. All in all, this will be an interesting game for both teams from a tactician's perspective, even if Michigan does post a lopsided victory. And that's exactly what I think they're going to do. I think Colorado State could score some points, maybe test Michigan's defense a little early. There are some questions for Michigan's defense, see exactly how smooth the transition was from Mike McDonald to Jesse Minter on defense. But in the end, I think Michigan will win a solid victory, 51-17 for the Wolverines. Game 3, Buffalo versus Maryland, noon kickoff. Buffalo's got a new coach with the best recruiting class in school history. Maryland struggles in the Big Ten, although last season was the first time they had an 8-win season since 2010. The question is whether or not Maryland will bank that solid win that most of the Blue Bloods in the Big Ten get against weaker teams against Buffalo. Now, Maryland did have a very exciting offseason, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They returned several key playmakers, particularly at receiver, and obviously quarterback Talia Tagovailoa returns with even more experience and playmaking ability. They were even able to land Florida transfer receiver Jacob Copeland. He was the Gators' leading receiver last season, making this a huge get for Mike Locksley and Maryland. The offensive line has 4 starters back, and they have a great pair of running backs returning that offer a great diverse skill set for speed and power. They also brought in 4-star running back Ramon Brown to top off what should be a fairly impressive offense. Defensively, Maryland took a bit of a hit with the transfer of 3 of their best recruits in 2021, though they do return some experience as well. Maryland might not exactly be on the talent level of the best in the Big Ten, but I do think that this season represents their best shot yet at knocking off some of the top teams in the conference. This particular game, I think Maryland's offense is going to shine. I don't think Buffalo has an offense that can score a ton of points just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and take Maryland 45-14. Game 4, Rutgers versus Boston College. Also a noon kickoff. Boston College has a better record with their current coach than Rutgers has for the same time period with their coach. Recognizing that stat depends on strength of schedule, but what we're reading is it might give Boston College the edge over Rutgers in this particular case. The question is, what can we expect from Rutgers in this particular game? This is actually going to be a pretty tough season opener for them. The pieces are there for Rutgers. They can do something interesting this season. I'm not saying that they're on the verge of a conference championship because, look, they just simply don't have the talent or depth needed to do that just yet. But they are more than capable of making a bowl game without getting help from a team dropping out this time. Coach Greg Schiano was able to pluck some much needed offensive weaponry from the transfer portal, especially on the offensive line. That's a position group that hasn't really helped Rutgers establish much of anything offensively in past seasons. But when they're on, they can be dangerous. Defensively, though, is where Rutgers lives or dies. Since the offense has traditionally had trouble scoring points, the defense was called on more than a few times to keep them within striking distance of winning games. This season, the defense has some questions in terms of depth and health. Multiple players transferred in after sitting out last season due to season-ending injuries, which is sad. So this game is going to be an interesting and immediate litmus test for how much more Rutgers needs to consistently win football games. Unfortunately for them, I don't think that they're going to have what it takes this season, at least not at this game. They might still be dangerous. They might still get an upset here or there. I don't think it's going to be consistent, though, so I'm going to go ahead and give Boston College the victory at home, 31-17 over Rutgers. All right, coming up next, Game 5, Notre Dame versus Ohio State, 7:30 kick at the Shoe. It's a primetime matchup on ABC with 2 premier programs. This is the kind of game that's going to determine the trajectory of Ohio State's season. If they win a blowout, there are no questions going into week 2. We know the Buckeyes will be good and ready for a title run at that point. If they win a close game, then the question becomes: is Notre Dame actually further along than we thought under their first-year head coach? Or perhaps maybe on the other side of the ball, maybe Jim Knowles hasn't actually been able to get the Ohio State defense right where they want them just yet. The only disastrous possibility for Ohio State that could happen is they lose. Plain and simple. If they lose this game, it might be an obvious statement, but they went a whole offseason chomping at the bit to take revenge out on Michigan and take back the Big Ten. If they lose the first game of the season, then suddenly they look vulnerable to a multitude of Big Ten teams ready and waiting to take down the Buckeyes. I don't think the Buckeye defense is going to be where it needs to be yet, but they obviously have some amazing weapons on offense. So honestly, the defense doesn't actually need to be great. It just needs to be good enough. If they can at least get there, then they have a shot at the revenge that they want. But again, if they lose, then all of a sudden you've got Penn State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Michigan, looking at Ohio State thinking they're beatable. For this particular instance, though, while I think Notre Dame will hang early on, I think Ohio State will pull it out in the end, 40-31. Game 6, last one we'll talk about, is Illinois versus Indiana. Got a conference matchup here. It's a bit anticlimactic, obviously, to be following up the Notre Dame-Ohio State matchup with Illinois-Indiana, but we're going to do it anyway, so sorry about that. Indiana has had 3 winning seasons in the last 30 years. Just in case you didn't quite get that, let me restate it. In the last 30 years, Indiana has had 3, count them 1, 2, 3, where they won more games than they lost. Their biggest upset was against Michigan State in 2016. Illinois dominated Wyoming, obviously, over the last weekend, but they're only marginally better than Indiana, you would think. The question is, what should we expect from this particular primetime matchup? The game is in primetime. It's so interesting to me. So here's the thing. I actually think Illinois is a lot better than Indiana this particular week. And so when I wrote my analysis of this game, it was before I saw Illinois put up 38 points against Wyoming and only allow 6. They didn't allow a touchdown, which is crazy for an Illinois defense. The fact that they held an opposing team out of the end zone, period. I don't care who the opponent is. I'm pretty sure Eastern Michigan could score a touchdown on Illinois in previous years. The fact that this year a Brett Bielema coach team is keeping teams out of the end zone it makes me think that Brett Bielema is on his way. Illinois had to do some retooling from last season, and unfortunately for them, they don't exactly need a ton more pieces to fit together before they have a realistic shot at a bowl bid. And based on what they did to Wyoming, maybe the rest of the Big Ten should be on notice. However, the same cannot be said for Indiana. Pretty much everywhere you look, there are new faces on the team. That includes the coaching staff. They were anemic on offense last season. They didn't have much of a rushing attack. Their defense really couldn't stop anything. And while there is some experience returning, especially on defense, there's not enough production on this team to expect anything from the Hoosiers this year. So my prediction for this game is going to be another solid Illinois victory. I think Indiana is better than Wyoming, so I'll give them that benefit of the doubt at least. I think that they'll score a few more points, but I think I might actually be, is highballing a term? I'm just going to say it. I think I might actually be highballing Indiana's offense here, or maybe lowballing Illinois' defense with this prediction, but I'm going to take Illinois 41-24, and if Indiana gets 24 points, I might actually be surprised. In any case, that'll do it for us. My voice is about to go, so I'm going to call it. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the weekend. It's going to be an amazing weekend. Tons of games going on. It's going to be awesome. Don't forget to check out our East Division preview. Like I said, link is in the show notes, so you can find it there. Like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell. This is Team Rivalry.